Today's horror story is written by Lutherkross. I'll never forget the day my Maw died. She held on longer than any of us expected she would have, but eventually, death comes for us all. You don't care how or where or when. When it's time to go, well, it's time to go. It's not that I was shocked when Dr. Peterson called to tell me that she'd taken a turn for the worse. I was in denial. We all were. But I knew. The second I recognized his voice, I knew why he'd called. I knew that Ma wasn't long for this world, and like a good, dutiful son, I packed myself up in my car and drove for the city. For the hospital is where she'd spend her final moments. Everybody was there when I showed up. My brothers, my sister, my aunts, uncles, and cousins. It pained me that Pa couldn't be there with us, and my heart sank when I realized that it would be my responsibility to tell him that Ma had passed on. I dreaded that conversation more than the moment my Ma would draw her final breath. I held her hand till the very end, from the moment I crossed the threshold of her room till her dying breath left her lips. It's such a strange thing to be holding on to someone like that when their soul leaves their body. I could feel her go. There was a change in the air, a drop in pressure or something like that, and then she was just gone. The room erupted in howling cries of pain and grief. Aunt Geraldine ripped open the door and screeched into the hallway. Nurses came running, shoving us all out of the way. I simply smiled, patted Ma's hand, and stood up to move out of their way. A few tears ran down my cheeks as I watched the nurses confirm what I already knew. Ma had finally passed on. She would suffer no more, and for that, I was grateful. The drive home was spent in pure silence. I turned the radio off and left myself alone with my thoughts. I was sickened by the fact that part of me was glad to see Ma go. I mean, no one should have to suffer the way she did. And that part of her journey was finally over. But then my thoughts would turn back to Pa, and my gut would twist itself up into knots. I had no idea what kind of commotion he might cause when I broke the news to him. Lately, he'd been a right thorn in my backside. I just hoped he wouldn't send me to be with Ma prematurely. When I got home that night, Pa was already agitated. I think he knew about Ma, somehow, before he even uttered a word. He was standing in the darkest corner of the living room, his back facing me. He rocked, gently swaying on his feet. He did that sometimes. It scared the crap out of me when I woke up to find him standing in the darkened corners of my bedroom that way. But I could never be mad at him. He was my Pa, my blood. Pa, I called out, closing the front door behind me. Pa, we need to talk. He stopped rocking and stood completely still, his eyes boring holes into that dark corner. I flopped down on the couch and took a deep breath, rubbing my eyes with the palms of my hands. It's about Ma, I said, and before I could even move my hands away from my eyes, Pa was standing over me, boring into me with his cold, gray eyes. After a few moments, I realized that his intense stare was his way of telling me to continue, so I did. It's about Ma, I stammered, unsure of how to say the words. I sighed deeply and tears broke free from my eyes. She's dead, Pa. Ma's dead. My body racked with sobs and I broke down into a blubbering mess right there on the couch. When I finally found myself again, I looked up to see Pa sitting in the chair across the way with his head in his hands. I could clearly see that he was sobbing, but there was no sound. My heart broke all over again, watching him suffer in silent torment. But I knew what I had to do. It was time. Pa, I said, reaching a shaking hand towards him. There's something else you need to know. He looked up at me then, his eyes red-rimmed and full of those awful, silent tears. You're dead too, Pa. It's time for you to go now.